just don't care anymore because they're so obviously full of shit, right? Like, actually, if you look, I mean, even just you talk to like working and middle class Latino voters, they hate the open border even more than like my family from rural Ohio and Kentucky because they don't like having their wages undercut. When the cartels are doing business in their communities, it's the Latinos that are actually the most pissed off about it. So I just kind of roll my eyes at it. I think that you have to have a certain sense of humor about American politics, and it's easy to do when you're running against Kamala Harris and you're running with Donald Trump. Because as much as he obviously, I mean, look, I think they've done more to him than any presidential candidate in my lifetime. He still actually has an amazing sense of humor about the whole thing. And oftentimes, like, I call him obviously like every day at this point, talking about the campaign, but he always ends up cracking a joke. And I think it's in part because he knows, like, that's what's good for me in that moment is we got to laugh about some of this stuff or we're going to go crazy.
Yeah, there is now, we're in October, we've got about 2 weeks left, so now every single day there's some article coming out in a publication that Donald Trump said something Hitlerian or about Hitler or about like, so it does seem to me that the hysteria is at a fever pitch.
It really is.
What do you think about John Kelly, who did come out and say Trump is a fascist and this is fascism and all of that?
Well, first of all, the amount of stock the media puts in a disgruntled ex-employee. I mean, John Kelly was fired, right? And look, he served his country, but he was fired. And he's pissed off about Trump over that. And if you talk to the people who were in the room when Trump allegedly said these things that he said, Mike Pence's former chief of staff are saying it's totally made up, it's a total lie. But here's the really interesting thing, right? 3-4 years ago, the media were all calling John Kelly an evil racist for helping to promote Donald Trump's border policies. And now it shows how thin this is, right? Like Dick Cheney, who I legitimately think is the single worst vice president easily of my lifetime, right?
But effective.
But effective at like destroying the country,
well,
right?
That's what I meant.
And maybe that's why he's endorsing Kamala Harris. It's like, finally somebody's come along who's been even worse than I have. Is Kamala Harris. But the fact that the media now pretends that he's like some hero of human rights, the guy was a disaster. I mean, we invaded Iraq. We invaded
with this
quagmire
down
in
peace,
Afghanistan. All of these Americans who lost their lives, who lost their limbs, that was because of very stupid leadership. And now we're going to forget about it because the media hates Donald Trump. It's the most insane thing I've seen in politics. And threat to democracy. I figured out what a threat to democracy is when the American people vote for somebody the media doesn't like. Right. And that's not, definitionally, that's not a threat to democracy.
Shit,
that's
what am I doing?
Democracy that even though the media lies hysterically about Trump, the American people still want, to be able to afford groceries and housing.
The worldview, whether we call it Cold War liberalism or however we want to frame the worldview that America is an empire and must continue to be one at all costs, with running up trillions of dollars worth of debt, getting involved in foreign conflicts anywhere from the Ukraine or the Middle East. There are people now saying we need to invade Iran. And that if America steps back on the world stage, that it's a power vacuum that's going to be filled by China, by Russia, and that America should continue to pay for the defense of all of these European countries, and that America should kind of, shoulder that burden. And my generation, we saw Iraq, we saw Afghanistan. We've also seen